The small alarm clock rang loudly next to Lily Baker's bed. She opened her tired eyes and quickly turned it off. It was 5:30 in the morning. Lily had only slept for 4 hours after finishing her college assignment late at night. She sighed, but got up anyway. She could not be late for her morning shift at the coffee shop. Lily looked around her tiny apartment. It was all she could afford after her mother died 6 months ago. The medical bills had taken almost everything they had. At 19 years old, Lily was alone in the world, working 2 jobs while trying to keep her scholarship at the local community college. She touched the simple wooden box on her nightstand. Inside was her mother's ring, the only valuable thing Lily owned. Her mother, Grace, had always said it was special. "One day I'll tell you the story behind this ring," Grace had promised. But cancer took her before she could share that story. Lily got ready quickly. She put on her uniform for the coffee shop and packed her waitress outfit for her evening job at Preston's, one of the fanciest restaurants in Chicago. She didn't have time for breakfast. A quick cup of coffee at work would have to be enough. The morning went by in a blur of coffee orders and tired customers. By the time her shift ended at 2 p.m., Lily's feet already hurt. She had only 3 hours before her evening job started. Just enough time to attend her one class of the day and change clothes. "Professor Davis gave us another essay," complained Lily's classmate Ben as they walked out of the classroom. "At least it's only 5 pages, this time," Lily said with a small smile. She liked Ben. He was one of the few friends she had made since starting college. "Want to study together tomorrow at the library?" he asked hopefully. "Can't. I picked up an extra shift at the coffee shop," Lily replied. "I need the money." Ben nodded, understanding but disappointed. "Another time then." Lily rushed to change into her black and white waitress uniform in the college bathroom. She pulled her long brown hair into a neat bun and applied a little makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. Preston's had strict rules about how their staff should look. When she arrived at the restaurant, the manager, Mrs. Clark, was waiting with a serious expression. "Lily, we have a very important guest tonight. Mr. Edward Miller is hosting a private dinner in our VIP section. He's one of the richest men in America and a regular client. Everything must be perfect." "Yes, Mrs. Clark," Lily nodded. She had heard of Edward Miller. Everyone had. He was a billionaire investor who owned companies all over the world. His face often appeared in business magazines. "You'll be serving his table with Stephen. Don't make any mistakes," Mrs. Clark warned. Lily felt nervous. Rich people could be difficult. If she did something wrong, she might lose this job, and she couldn't afford that. The VIP section of Preston's was separate from the main dining room. It had its own entrance and was decorated with expensive art and crystal chandeliers. Lily and Stephen prepared the large round table for 8 people. They polished every glass until it shined and made sure the silverware was perfectly arranged. At exactly 7 p.m., the guests arrived. 4 men and 3 women in expensive clothes entered the room, laughing and talking loudly. Lily stood quietly by the wall waiting to take their drink orders, and then he walked in. Edward Miller was taller than Lily had expected. He was around 60 years old with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He wore a perfectly fitted dark suit that probably cost more than Lily's yearly rent. But what caught her attention was not his expensive clothes or confident walk. It was the ring on his right hand. Lily felt her heart stop for a moment. The ring had a unique design, a gold band with a square emerald stone in the center and small patterns carved all around it. It looked exactly like her mother's ring, the one sitting in the wooden box in her apartment. She couldn't stop staring at it as she moved around the table pouring water for the guests. Her hands trembled slightly. "Is everything all right, miss?" asked one of the women when Lily nearly spilled water on the tablecloth. "Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry," Lily quickly apologized. Throughout the dinner, Lily kept looking at Edward Miller's ring. It couldn't be the same, she thought. Maybe it just looked similar. But every time she got a closer look, she became more certain. The patterns, the unusual shape of the stone. It was identical to her mother's. The dinner continued for hours. The guests drank expensive wine and ate the chef's special menu. They talked about business deals and vacation homes. It was a world Lily knew nothing about. As she served the dessert, a chocolate souffle with gold flakes on top, Lily accidentally bumped into Edward Miller's chair. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said quickly. Edward Miller turned to look at her, clearly annoyed by the interruption. That's when Lily saw the ring up close. Without thinking, she spoke. "Hi, sir. My mother has a ring just like yours." The moment the words left her mouth, Lily wanted to disappear. Mrs. Clark would fire her for sure. You didn't talk to guests like that, especially not to someone like Edward Miller. The table went quiet. Everyone looked at her. Lily's face turned red with embarrassment. But instead of getting angry, Edward Miller looked at her with sudden interest. "What did you say?" he asked. His voice was deep and commanding. Lily swallowed hard. "I'm sorry for speaking out of turn, sir. It's just your ring. My mother had one exactly like it." "Had?" Edward Miller raised an eyebrow. "She passed away 6 months ago, sir, but she always wore that ring. She said it was special." Something changed in Edward Miller's expression. The annoyance disappeared, replaced by something Lily couldn't quite read. Surprise, concern. "What was your mother's name?" he asked quietly. "Grace, sir. Grace Baker. But she was Grace Williams before she married." Edward Miller's face turned pale. He set down his dessert spoon with a shaky hand. The other guests at the table exchanged confused looks. "Edward, is everything okay?" asked one of the men. But Edward Miller didn't answer. He kept staring at Lily as if he had seen a ghost. "How old are you?" he finally asked. 19, sir," Lily replied, confused by his questions. Edward Miller did a quick calculation in his head. Then he reached for his wallet and pulled out a business card. "When does your shift end?" he asked. "At 11, sir. Come to this address after you finish. We need to talk." He handed her the card. It was simple white cardstock with just his name and an address in the expensive part of downtown. "I don't understand," Lily said. "Grace Williams." Edward Miller said the name softly, almost to himself. "I knew her. A long time ago." Mrs. Clark appeared at that moment, clearly worried about the interaction between Lily and their important guest. "Is everything satisfactory, Mr. Miller?" she asked with a nervous smile. "Yes," he replied, still looking at Lily. "Your waitress has been most illuminating." The rest of the dinner passed in a blur for Lily. Her mind was racing with questions. How did this billionaire know her mother? Why did he have the same ring? What did he want to talk to her about? At 11 p.m., Lily stood outside the restaurant holding Edward Miller's business card. Part of her wanted to just go home and forget the whole thing. But another part, the part that had missed her mother terribly for 6 months, needed answers. She took a deep breath and waved for a taxi. Whatever connection existed between her mother and Edward Miller, Lily was going to find out what it was. She had a feeling her life was about to change forever. The taxi pulled up in front of a tall glass building in downtown Chicago. Lily looked up and could not even see the top floor. Her hands shook as she paid the driver. The fare had cost her almost 2 hours of coffee shop wages, but she had to come. The lobby was huge, with marble floors and a security desk. A guard in a neat uniform looked at her with suspicion. Lily did not belong here in her waitress uniform. "Can I help you?" he asked. "I'm here to see Mr. Edward Miller," Lily said, trying to sound confident. She showed him the business card. The guard made a quick phone call. After a few seconds, he nodded and pointed to an elevator at the back of the lobby. "Top floor, Mr. Miller is expecting you." The elevator moved so fast that Lily's ears popped. When the doors opened, she stepped into a large penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights spreading out in all directions. The place was bigger than her entire apartment building. Edward Miller stood by the window, looking out at the view. He had changed from his dinner suit into more casual clothes, but he still wore the ring. He turned when he heard the elevator. "Thank you for coming, Lily," he said. His voice sounded different now, less commanding and more uncertain. "How do you know my mother?" Lily asked right away. She didn't want to waste time. Edward gestured to a white couch. Please sit down. Would you like something to drink, water, coffee? Just answers, Lily said, but she sat down. Edward nodded and took a seat across from her. I need to see it, he said. The ring you mentioned, do you have it with you? Lily shook her head. It's at my apartment, but I have a picture. She pulled out her phone and found a photo of her mother from last Christmas. In it, Grace was smiling weakly, already sick but trying to look happy for her daughter. The ring was clearly visible on her right hand. Edward took the phone with careful hands. He stared at the picture for a long time. Lily saw his eyes fill with tears. Grace, he whispered. She looks so different, but still the same. How did you know her? Lily asked again. Edward handed the phone back and took a deep breath. We met in college 30 years ago. I was a scholarship student from a poor family. Your mother was studying art history. She was the most beautiful, kind person I had ever met. Lily listened carefully. Her mother had rarely talked about her college days. We fell in love, Edward continued. We were together for almost 2 years. I had nothing to offer her except that ring. It belonged to my grandmother. It was the only valuable thing my family owned. Lily felt confused. But my mother always said my father died before I was born. She never mentioned you. Edward looked down at his own ring. I didn't die. But I did leave her. His voice was full of regret. I had a chance to start my first business, but I needed to partner with the son of a wealthy family. His father didn't approve of my relationship with Grace. He said his son could only work with me if I cut all ties with your mother. You chose money over her, Lily said coldly. Edward nodded. I was young and ambitious. I thought I could make a fortune and then find her again. I left the ring with her as a promise that I would come back. He paused. But by the time I made my first million, she had disappeared. I hired people to find her, but it was like she had vanished. She moved to Chicago to live with her aunt, Lily said. After you left her, Edward looked at Lily carefully now, studying her face. When did you say you were born? June 12th, 2005. Edward did a quick calculation. That's about 8 months after I left. His face showed shock as he realized what this might mean. Did Grace ever say anything about your father? Anything specific? Lily shook her head. Just that he died before I was born. She had a few old photos, but they were damaged in a flood at our old apartment when I was 10. I never saw them clearly. Edward stood up and walked to a desk. He returned with an old photograph and handed it to Lily. It showed a much younger Edward with his arm around a young woman. They were standing in front of a college building, both smiling widely. Lily gasped. The woman was clearly her mother, about 30 years younger. She had the same smile that Lily saw in the mirror every day. That's my mother, she whispered. Yes, Edward said. And I think I might be your father, Lily. The room seemed to spin around her. Lily put the photo down and stood up quickly. No, that's not possible. My father is dead. My mother would have told me if you were alive. Grace might have told you I was dead because it was easier than explaining the truth. That I abandoned her, Edward said softly. I don't blame her. Lily felt anger rising in her chest. If you're my father, where were you all these years? My mother worked 2 jobs to support us. She couldn't afford good doctors when she got sick. We lost our house. Where were you? Edward's face showed pain. I didn't know about you, Lily, I swear. If I had known Grace was pregnant when I left, you would have what, stayed? Given up your precious business deal? Lily's voice was sharp. Edward didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, I don't know what I would have done back then. I was a different person, selfish, ambitious. He looked at her directly. But I know what I want to do now. What's that? Lily asked. I want to know my daughter, if you are my daughter. Lily sat back down, her legs suddenly weak. Could this rich, powerful man really be her father? The father she had believed was dead her entire life. "We need to be sure," Edward said. "I can arrange for a DNA test tomorrow. It's simple and quick." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay. In the meantime, I want to hear everything about you and Grace, the last 30 years of your lives that I missed." Lily didn't know where to begin. Her mind was still trying to process everything. "We always struggled with money," she finally said. "Mom worked as a museum guide and then at a library. She loved books and art. She got sick 2 years ago. Cancer." Edward closed his eyes, looking pained. "I'm so sorry. If I had known—" "You could have paid for better treatment," Lily finished for him. "She might still be alive." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. "Where are you living now?" Edward asked after a moment. "A small apartment on the south side. I work at a coffee shop in the mornings and at Preston's in the evenings. I'm studying education at community college. I want to be a teacher someday." Edward looked at his watch. It was nearly 1 a.m. "It's late. Let me have my driver take you home. We can meet tomorrow for the DNA test." Lily stood up, suddenly feeling exhausted. The events of the evening had drained her completely. "One more thing," Edward said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Please take this." Lily looked inside. It was full of cash. "I don't want your money," she said, trying to hand it back. "It's not charity. If you are my daughter, it's just a small part of what I owe you. Please." Lily hesitated, then took the envelope. The truth was she needed the money. Her rent was due in 3 days. As she rode down in the elevator, Lily's mind was spinning with questions. Could Edward Miller really be her father? Had her mother lied to her all these years? And if the DNA test came back positive, what would that mean for her life? The night air was cool as she stepped out of the building. A black car was waiting for her. As she got in, Lily thought about the 2 identical rings, one on the hand of a billionaire, the other in a wooden box in her small apartment. 2 circles connecting lives that had been separate for so long. Lily woke up early the next morning. For a moment she thought the events of the previous night had been a dream. Then she saw the envelope of cash on her small table and knew it had all been real. Edward Miller, one of the richest men in America, might be her father. She got up and opened the wooden box that held her mother's ring. It looked exactly like the one Edward wore. Lily slipped it onto her finger, but it was too big. Her mother's hands had been larger than hers. Her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered. "Lily, it's Edward Miller. Did I wake you?" "No, I was already up." "Good. I've arranged for the DNA test this morning at 10. My driver can pick you up at 9:30 if that works for you." Lily looked at her schedule. She had a morning shift at the coffee shop, but this was more important. "I'll need to call work and tell them I can't come in," she said. "I understand. I'll see you." At the clinic, Lily called her manager at the coffee shop and made up an excuse about being sick. She felt bad about lying, but she couldn't explain the real reason. It sounded too crazy. At 9:30, a black car pulled up outside her building. The driver was polite and opened the door for her. Lily had never been treated like this before. The car drove through the city to a private medical clinic in an expensive neighborhood. Edward was waiting in the lobby when she arrived. He looked like he hadn't slept much. "Thank you for coming," he said. A nurse led them to a room where a doctor explained the DNA test. It was simple, just a swab inside the cheek for both of them. The doctor said they would rush the results and have them by tomorrow. "Would you like to get some breakfast?" Edward asked after they finished. "I know a good place nearby." Lily nodded. She was hungry, and she had more questions for him. The restaurant was small but fancy. People looked at them strangely, the older rich man and the young woman in simple clothes. Lily felt out of place, but Edward didn't seem to notice or care. After they ordered, Edward asked, "Tell me more about Grace. Was she happy?" Lily thought about it. "She was always kind and loving to me. She worked hard to give me a good life. But sometimes when she thought I wasn't looking, she seemed sad, like something was missing. Edward looked down at his ring. I looked for her, for years. I hired private investigators, but they never found her. She changed her name when she got married, Lily said. My father, the man I thought was my father, was named John Baker. They were only married for a year before he left. I was just a baby. I don't remember him at all. Edward seemed surprised. Grace was married? The investigators never found any record of that. Mom said they got married by a justice of the peace. It wasn't a big ceremony. The food arrived, and they ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Edward asked, Do you have any pictures of Grace from over the years? I'd like to see them. I have a photo album at my apartment. It's one of the few things I kept after we had to sell most of our stuff to pay for Mom's medical bills. Edward's face showed pain when she mentioned the medical bills. I wish I had known. I could have helped. Why did you keep looking for her? Lily asked. You left her for money. You made your choice. Edward put down his fork. I did make a choice. A terrible one. I thought I was being practical. My business partner's father made it clear. End things with Grace, or lose the investment I needed. I was poor, hungry for success, and stupid. So you picked the money, Lily said flatly. Yes. And I got what I wanted. The business succeeded. I made millions, then billions. I have houses all over the world, a private jet, more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. He looked out the window. And I've been alone the whole time. No wife, no children, no family. You could have found someone else, Lily pointed out. I tried dating other women over the years, but none of them were Grace. He touched his ring. I kept this as a reminder of the worst mistake of my life. After breakfast, Edward asked if he could see Lily's apartment. She felt embarrassed. His bathroom was probably bigger than her whole place, but she agreed. When they arrived, Edward looked around the small, run-down building with shock. This is where you live? Not everyone has penthouse apartments, Lily said with a hint of anger. Inside her apartment was tiny but clean and organized. Edward seemed too big for the space, like a giant in a dollhouse. Lily showed him the photo album. It was filled with pictures of her growing up, always with Grace, by her side. She was beautiful, Edward said as he looked through the pages. She didn't change much over the years. The cancer changed her at the end, Lily said quietly. She got so thin and tired. The doctors said with better treatment she might have had more time, but our insurance wouldn't cover the experimental treatments. Edward closed the album gently. I'm so sorry, Lily. I can't change the past, but if the test shows I'm your father, I want to help you now. I don't need your money, Lily said, though she knew it wasn't completely true. She was drowning in debt. It's not just about money. It's about taking responsibility. If you're my daughter, I've missed 19 years of your life. I can't get those years back, but I can be here now. Lily didn't know what to say. Part of her was still angry at this man who might be her father, who had abandoned her mother for money and success. But another part of her was curious. What would it be like to have a father after all these years? What happens if the test says, "You are my father?" she asked. Edward thought for a moment. That's up to you. I would like to help with your education. Make sure you don't have to work so hard while studying. I'd like to get to know you, but I won't force anything on you. And if you're not my father, then I still want to help you. You're Grace's daughter, and I loved her. I owe her that much. Lily walked to her small window and looked out at the street below. Her life had been simple before last night, hard but simple. Now everything was complicated. I need time to think, she said. Of course. The results won't be ready until tomorrow anyway. Edward stood up. Can I pick you up tomorrow at noon? We can get the results together. Lily nodded. After Edward left, she sat on her bed and held her mother's ring. What would Grace think about all this? Had she really kept the truth from Lily all these years? And if Edward was her father, could she forgive him for leaving them? She had work at Preston's that evening, but she couldn't focus. She made mistakes with orders and nearly dropped a tray of drinks. Mrs. Clark noticed. "What's wrong with you tonight, Lily? Are you sick?" "I'm sorry, Mrs. Clark, I have a lot on my mind." "Well, leave it at the door next time. This is a 5-star restaurant, not a therapy session." When Lily got home that night, she was exhausted. She fell asleep with her mother's ring clutched in her hand, wondering what the next day would bring. The morning came too quickly. Lily got ready slowly, putting extra care into her appearance. She wasn't sure why it mattered, but it did. At noon, the black car was waiting. The driver took her to the clinic, where Edward was already waiting. He looked as nervous as she felt. The doctor invited them into his office and opened a folder. "We have the results of your DNA test," he said. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Baker." He looked up at them both. "The test confirms with 99.9% certainty that you are father and daughter." The doctor's words hung in the air. Lily felt like she couldn't breathe. Edward Miller was her father. The rich man sitting next to her, a stranger until 2 days ago, was her real father. Edward reached out and took her hand. His eyes were wet with tears. "Thank you, doctor," he said, his voice shaking. They left the clinic in silence. Outside, Edward's driver waited with the car. "Would you like to go somewhere to talk?" Edward asked gently. "A park, maybe? Somewhere quiet?" Lily nodded. She couldn't find words yet. Her whole life had just changed with one sentence from the doctor. The driver took them to a small park by the lake. It was a weekday afternoon, so the place was nearly empty. They walked slowly along a path near the water. "I don't know what to call you," Lily finally said. "Edward seems wrong, but I can't call you Dad. Not yet." "You can call me whatever makes you comfortable," Edward said. "This is all new for both of us." They sat on a bench facing the lake. Seagulls flew overhead, and small waves lapped at the shore. "I'm angry at my mother," Lily admitted. "She lied to me my whole life. She told me my father was dead," Edward sighed. "Don't be angry with Grace. She probably thought it was better for you to believe I was dead than to know I had left her for money. But you would have stayed if you had known about me, right?" Lily looked at him, needing to hear him say it. Edward was quiet for a long moment. "I want to say yes. I want to believe I would have been better than that. But the truth is, I don't know. The person I was back then, he was selfish and ambitious." He looked at her directly. "But I do know that the person I am now would give up everything to have been in your life all these years." It wasn't the answer Lily wanted, but she appreciated his honesty. "What happens now?" she asked. "That's up to you," Edward said. "I want to help you to be part of your life, but I won't force myself into it. You've lived 19 years without me. You don't need me now." "I don't," Lily agreed, "but that doesn't mean I don't want to know you." She paused. "My mother kept your ring all these years. She must have still cared about you even after what you did." Edward touched his own ring. "Grace was always more forgiving than I deserved." They walked back to the car. Edward asked if Lily would join him for dinner that evening, but she shook her head. "I need time to process all this, and I have a shift at Preston's tonight." "You don't have to work there anymore," Edward said. "I can help with your expenses." Lily frowned. "I can't just quit my jobs. I have responsibilities." "Of course. I didn't mean to overstep." Edward looked embarrassed. "I'm not very good at this father thing yet." "No, you're not," Lily agreed, but she smiled a little to soften her words. The driver took her back to her apartment. Before she got out of the car, Edward gave her his personal phone number. "Call me any time for anything," he said. That night at Preston's, Lily felt like she was in a dream. She served food and drinks to rich people who never really looked at her, just like always. But now she knew she was the daughter of one of the richest men in America. It didn't seem real. When she got home late that night, there was a package outside her door. Inside was a new phone with a note from Edward. "I thought you might need this. All paid for, no strings attached." Lily almost sent it back, but she needed a new phone. Her old one had a cracked screen and barely held a charge. She turned it on and saw it was the latest model, something she could never have afforded. The next morning, Lily didn't have class or work until the afternoon. She decided to visit her mother's grave. She hadn't been there in a few weeks. The cemetery was peaceful in the morning light. Lily sat by the simple headstone and told her mother everything that had happened. "Why didn't you tell me he was alive, Mom? Why did you let me believe he was dead?" There was no answer, just the sound of birds in the trees. As she sat there, a text message came on her new phone. It was from Edward. "I hope you don't mind, but I've set up a trust fund for you. It will pay for your education and living expenses. No strings attached. You can still work if you want to, but you don't have to work to survive anymore." Lily stared at the message, not sure how to feel. Part of her wanted to refuse his money, but another part thought about how hard her mother had worked, how they had struggled, how Grace had died without proper medical care because they couldn't afford it. "What should I do, Mom?" she whispered to the grave. Another text came through. "I'm also looking into scholarships for you at better colleges if you're interested. Your current school is good, but with your grades you could go anywhere." Lily felt a spark of hope. She had always wanted to attend a better school, but it had never been possible financially. Could she accept Edward's help without forgiving him completely? She texted back, "Thank you for the phone and the trust fund. I need to think about the college thing." Edward replied immediately, "Take all the time you need. No pressure." Over the next week, Lily and Edward talked on the phone almost every day. He told her about his business, his travels, his life. She told him about her studies, her friends, and her dreams of becoming a teacher. It was strange, but also nice to have someone who wanted to hear about her day. On Saturday, Edward invited her to dinner at his penthouse. He had his chef prepare a special meal. "I hope you don't mind eating here instead of at a restaurant," Edward said as they sat at his large dining table. "I wanted to show you something after dinner." The food was amazing, better than anything, served at Preston's. Lily tried not to think about how much it probably cost. After they ate, Edward led her to a room she hadn't seen on her first visit. It was set up as an office, with a large desk and walls covered in framed photographs and news articles. "This is my life," Edward said. "My businesses, my awards, my achievements." He gestured at the walls. "But there's something missing." Lily looked around and noticed there were no personal photos. No family pictures, no wedding photos, no children. Just Edward shaking hands with famous people or cutting ribbons at new buildings. "You've been alone all this time," she said. Edward nodded. "I've dated women over the years. Some wanted to marry me for my money. Others seemed to care about me, but I never let them get too close." He looked at her. "The truth is, I never got over Grace. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left her, and I've been paying for it ever since." He walked to his desk and opened a drawer. He took out a small velvet box and handed it to Lily. "I had this made for you," he said. Lily opened the box. Inside was a ring that looked just like her mother's and Edward's, but smaller to fit her finger. "I thought you might want your own version," Edward explained. "The 3 rings connected, like our lives." Lily slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Thank you," she said, touched by the gesture. "There's something else," Edward said. He seemed nervous now. "I've been thinking about how to honor Grace's memory. I want to start a foundation in her name, the Grace Williams Foundation. It would provide scholarships for single parents and their children to help them get better education and opportunities." Lily felt tears in her eyes. Mom would have loved that. She always wanted to help others, even when we barely had enough for ourselves. "Would you help me run it?" Edward asked. "No one knew Grace better than you. I need your guidance to make sure it truly honors her." For the first time since learning Edward was her father, Lily felt a real connection to him, not because of the money or the gifts, but because he truly wanted to honor her mother's memory. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." 6 months had passed since the night Lily had noticed Edward's ring at Preston's restaurant. So much had changed in that short time. She now lived in a nice apartment near her new university. Edward had helped her transfer to one of the best schools in the country, where she was studying to become a teacher. Lily still worked part-time, but now it was at a community center teaching art to children. She didn't need the money anymore. The trust fund Edward had set up covered all her expenses. But she enjoyed the work. It made her feel like she was following in her mother's footsteps, sharing knowledge and creativity with others. Today was an important day. The Grace Williams Foundation was officially opening. Edward had purchased a beautiful old building downtown and renovated it. The foundation would provide scholarships, housing assistance, and medical support to single parents and their children. Lily stood in front of her mirror getting ready for the opening ceremony. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress, her mother's favorite color. On her finger was the ring Edward had given her, matching the ones her parents had worn. Sometimes she still couldn't believe how much her life had changed. Her phone rang. It was Edward. "Good morning," he said. "Are you ready for the big day?" "Almost," Lily replied, just a little nervous. "You'll be wonderful. Your speech is perfect." Edward had asked Lily to speak at the opening. She would tell her mother's story and explain the foundation's mission. It was important to both of them that Grace's memory was at the center of everything they did. "I'll pick you up in 30 minutes, Edward said. When she hung up, Lily took a deep breath. Her relationship with Edward had grown stronger over the past months, but it was still complicated. She had forgiven him for leaving her mother, understanding that he had been young and made a mistake. But there were still moments when she felt angry about all the years they had struggled while he lived in luxury. Edward understood her mixed feelings. He never pushed her to call him Dad, or to act like they had always been family. He gave her space when she needed it and was there when she wanted him around. Slowly, they were building something real. The doorbell rang. Edward was early. Lily grabbed her purse and opened the door, but it wasn't Edward standing there. It was Ben, her friend from community college. "Ben, what are you doing here? I wanted to wish you good luck today." He handed her a small bouquet of flowers. "These are for you." Lily smiled and invited him in. She and Ben had become closer in recent months. He was one of the few people who knew the whole story about Edward being her father. "Are you nervous about your speech?" Ben asked. "A little," Lily admitted. "There will be a lot of important people there." "You'll be great," Ben said. "You're doing an amazing thing, Lily. Your mom would be so proud." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Edward. He smiled when he saw Ben. "Good morning, Ben. Are you joining us today?" "Yes, sir, if that's okay." "Of course. The more support Lily has, the better." The three of them rode to the foundation building in Edward's car. Lily sat quietly, thinking about her mother. Grace had been gone for almost a year now. Lily wished she could see all of this. The foundation, the scholarships, the help they would provide to families like theirs. When they arrived, the street was already filled with people. Reporters took pictures as Edward, Lily, and Ben walked into the building. Inside, a large crowd waited. There were business people, politicians, and many single parents and their children who would be the first recipients of the foundation's help. Edward led Lily to a covered wall at the back of the main hall. A large cloth hung over something. "I have a surprise for you," he said quietly. "I was going to wait until after the ceremony, but I think you should see it now." He nodded to an assistant, who pulled a cord. The cloth fell away, revealing a beautiful painted portrait of Grace. She looked just as Lily remembered her. Kind eyes, gentle smile, and the ring on her finger catching the light. Lily felt tears in her eyes. "It's perfect," she whispered. "How did you get it done? You never met her." "I hired an artist to work from the photos in your album," Edward explained, "and from the stories you told me about her. I wanted her to be here today." The ceremony began. Edward spoke first, explaining how the foundation came to be. He told the crowd about Grace, about losing her and finding Lily. He didn't hide his mistakes or try to make himself look better. "I made a terrible choice 30 years ago," he said honestly. "I chose money and success over love. It was the biggest mistake of my life, and I can never fully make up for it. But this foundation is a start. It will help people who are facing the same struggles that Grace and Lily faced, struggles they never should have had if I had made a different choice. Then it was Lily's turn to speak. She stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. She saw Ben smiling encouragingly. She saw the portrait of her mother watching over the hall, and she saw Edward with tears in his eyes, proud of the young woman she had become. My mother, Grace Williams, was the strongest person I've ever known, Lily began. She raised me alone, working multiple jobs to give me a good life. She taught me that education was the key to a better future. Even when she got sick, she made sure I stayed in school. Lily told the crowd about her mother's struggles, about the lack of support for single parents, about the medical bills that had taken everything they had. No one should have to choose between paying for treatment and keeping their home, she said. No parent should have to work so hard that they miss seeing their child grow up. The Grace Williams Foundation will help change that. She explained the programs they would offer: scholarships for single parents to continue their education, after-school programs for children, housing assistance, and medical support. My mother always said that helping one person might not change the world, but it could change the world for that person, Lily concluded. With this foundation, we hope to change the world for many families. The crowd applauded loudly. After the ceremony, people came to congratulate Lily and Edward. Reporters asked questions about the foundation and about their story. Edward handled most of the press, knowing Lily was still uncomfortable with the attention. Later, when most of the crowd had left, Lily, Edward, and Ben stood in the quiet hall. Edward looked at the portrait of Grace. "Do you think she would have forgiven me?" he asked Lily. Lily thought about it. "Yes," she said finally. "Mom wasn't one to hold grudges, and she would have loved what you're doing now." Edward nodded, his eyes still on the portrait. "I've accomplished a lot in my life. Built companies, made billions, traveled the world. But nothing has ever felt as important as this foundation, as finding you." Ben excused himself to get some refreshments, leaving father and daughter alone. "I have something for you," Edward said. He handed Lily a small box. Inside was an old key. "What's this for?" she asked. "It's the key to my grandmother's house in Michigan. It's where I grew up. It's not big or fancy, but it's been in our family for generations." Edward looked a bit nervous. "I thought we could visit it sometime. I could show you where your family comes from." Lily turned the key over in her hand. It was the first time Edward had referred to them as family so directly. "I'd like that," she said. And she meant it. They stood together, looking up at Grace's portrait. 3 generations connected by love, loss, and a pair of matching rings. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still unwritten. "Mom always said that life gives you second chances if you're brave enough to take them," Lily said softly. Edward put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Your mother was a very wise woman." Outside, the sun was setting over the city. The Grace Williams Foundation sign glowed softly in the gathering dusk, a beacon of hope for families who needed it most. Inside, a father and daughter began the journey of healing old wounds and building new memories. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a new beginning. And sometimes that's even better.